say I've had Ed in my conference, they go wow. But I'll let Ed to introduce himself and to share his latest innovation with us. Thank you, Ed.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm not sure if I deserved that from last year's presentation. I thought it was okay, but we should see.
It was great.
It was great. Thank you very much. Hopefully you won't see too much in common between last year's presentation and today. I've moved on, hopefully, a little bit in my thinking, and indeed the world has moved on a lot in the last 12 months in this area, in terms of mapping, in terms of geospatial technology. But I do want to cover over just the same basic points to start off with, to talk about why Google is interested in maps, geospatial technology, geography, and then burrow into some areas that are kind of developing today. Stuff that's really only started happening, I guess, in the last 3 or 4 months. We were just having a discussion earlier on, just how quickly technology is progressing now and how the internet is making everything happen at such a rapid pace. So a lot of what you see in my presentation today, I wouldn't have told you about last week because it didn't exist last week. At a basic point of view, why Google is interested in mapping and geography is that it helps to organize information. Google's mission in life is to organize the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful. And a large part about organizing information is sorting it, is trying to find the information that's useful to you as an individual as opposed to information that's not relevant. It's also about using geography, using mapping to identify patterns that were there in the huge amounts of information that we had available to us, but we didn't recognize them because we'd not looked at the information geographically. Almost you have kind of a geographical microscope or telescope, a different way of looking at information. And a classic example that you can ask any geographer about using geographic information systems or using geography to help organize information is this one. And it's actually from epidemiology. This was John Snow in London, Victorian London. He was a doctor interested in public health. And in this area of London, in and around Soho, he mapped where people were dying from cholera. And by mapping the outbreaks, he saw a pattern emerge in this particular neighbourhood. And he then looked at other sorts of information that he had available to him. And he had a hunch that this was to do with water supply. So he also then made a map of the water pumps in London. And then sure enough, in the centre of this outbreak of cholera, there was a water pump. Being a very practical man, he put a chain around the water pump to stop people using it, and the outbreak died down. And he established or helped to illustrate the link between bad water, infected water, and cholera. And it's a great use of geography, a classic example. Today, though, we're more likely to use geography on a mobile device like this. This is the latest Nexus 1 phone from Google, runs the Android operating system. But this, what I'm going to show you, will happen in almost any phone today. Any modern smartphone has the ability to know where it is. And it allows us to pop up when you go to the Google search page, just to go to google.com on your phone. You'll see at the top there it says, I know where you are, you're in Mountain View. Here's some information that's going to be relevant to you based on your location. These are the closest restaurants, coffee shops, bars, ATMs to where you are. And that information has been pre-calculated. You haven't asked specifically for that information to be made available to you, but because we know where your phone is, we have a database of where things are, we can make that information to you immediately accessible. And that's, again, another example. If rather than you have to think, okay, where am I? I'll then type in, I want to find ATMs, that information is already there. It's using geography behind the scenes to make all of that massive information more accessible. The technology, for us, is a platform, and we spend a lot of time making that platform available to as many people as we possibly can. There are millions of users of Google Maps, Google Earth, Google Maps on mobile devices. There are tens of thousands of developers that make use of the public APIs, the application programming interfaces that we have created. Behind all of our technology, there is an interface that developers can go and source data, source information, source satellite imagery, terrain models. All that information was there, and it was one or two lines of JavaScript for their web developers to build that into their application. And that's where we see this being used everywhere. We're also beginning to see mapping appear much more in devices. No doubt you would have heard of this thing called the iPad. Made a bit of a fuss about it a couple of weeks
Is it
ago.
any good?
Huh?
Is it any good?
Well, I'm buying one. Anyone else buying one? Yeah, a few people. We're the leading edge. The rest of you will buy one in due course. But a major reason,
We will talk about that next year.
One of the major demonstration parts of putting maps into these devices.
for
It'd be
sure.
great for
The
looking at a
smaller
map on a device that's got a 10-inch screen is perfect. But you can also now, if you're going to buy this year's model of the Audi A8, have Google Earth in your navigation system. So rather than just having a map of where you are, it's satellite imagery in 3D. You see the mountain valleys that you drive through. And I was in New York just last month, and as geeks like myself do, we wander around tech shops. And I was in a Circuit City, I think it was, having a look at this printer. And sure enough, on the printer, of course there's a touch screen on this printer, you can go to Google Maps. So on the printer itself, without having a computer connected, you can go and get a map of wherever you want and print that out straight from the printer.
Great.
So that's an example of this mapping technology just being embedded everywhere. Okay, so that's great. Maps are everywhere. Hundreds of millions of people using maps. Where do we go next? Well, one of the issues that we have with mapping, and it's something we mentioned last year, is the fact that mapping is, by its very nature, abstract. It's not great at providing people with a sense of what actually somewhere is like. You need to train yourself to understand the map, to see the content there. So, this is a quote I used last year, and I love it. I'll keep using it until more people use it. Reasoning draws a conclusion, but does not make the conclusion certain, unless the mind discovers it by the path of experience. This is Roger Bacon, who was one of the founders of modern science. And so, well, it's all very well to have a theory. It's all very well to experience something by reading about it or being told about it, but actually you only really understand something if you experience it. And this is what we're trying to do with our mapping technology, is to bring mapping closer to the experience of being there, to actually feeling what it's like to be in Luzerne, to be in Zurich, to be in Paris, to be in San Francisco. And you don't really get that sense from a map. So how else can we represent information? Yesterday, our colleagues in Moscow introduced this website, which is a tour of the Trans-Siberian Railway online. And the idea is to try and represent, well, what does it actually feel like to go